upheld by his righteous hand. Finding courage in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. Introduction. Fear is a universal emotion that grips the heart in times of uncertainty, danger, and adversity. From the racing heartbeat of sudden panic to the slow, grinding anxiety of prolonged distress, fear manifests in countless ways across human experience. Yet in the midst of this universal reality stands an ancient promise, words spoken through the prophet Isaiah that have comforted countless souls throughout history. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. This powerful declaration from God to his people offers an enduring anchor amid life's fiercest storms. This essay will examine the context, meaning, and personal application of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10, offering believers timeless assurance of God's presence, strength, and support in the face of fear and dismay. By understanding the depth of this promise, we discover not merely words of comfort, but a profound invitation to experience divine partnership in our moments of greatest vulnerability. 2. Context of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. Historical background. The book of Isaiah contains some of Scripture's most beautiful poetry and profound prophecy, written during tumultuous times in Israel's history. The specific section containing Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 was addressed to the Israelites during a period of national crisis. Many scholars believe these words were directed toward those experiencing or anticipating the Babylonian exile, a time when God's people were forcibly removed from their homeland, their temple destroyed, and their national identity threatened. This was not merely political upheaval, but spiritual devastation. The exiles questioned whether God had abandoned them or if foreign gods had proven more powerful. Their fear was existential. Had God forsaken his covenant? Would they ever return home? Could their identity, as God's chosen people, survive this catastrophe? Into this atmosphere of desperation, Isaiah's prophecy brought extraordinary hope. Chapter 41 forms part of what scholars call the Book of Comfort. Isaiah chapters 40 to 55, where God reassures Israel of his continuing faithfulness despite their present suffering. The promise of verse 10 comes not as an isolated statement, but within God's larger proclamation of redemption and restoration. God speaking through Isaiah. What makes Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 particularly powerful is that these are not merely the prophet's encouraging words. They are presented as the direct speech of God himself. The verse begins a divine message that extends through verse 20, where God personally addresses his people's fears and doubts. This direct divine address transforms what might otherwise be well-meaning encouragement into authoritative promise. The one who created the universe, who established covenant with Abraham, who delivered Israel from Egypt, now speaks comfort to his distressed people. Moreover, while initially directed to Israel, these words extend across time to all who enter covenant relationship with God, offering the same assurance to believers today. 3. Breaking down the verse. Do not fear, for I am with you. The command, do not fear, appears hundreds of times throughout Scripture, a divine recognition of humanity's persistent struggle with anxiety and terror. Fear itself is not condemned as sinful. Rather, God acknowledges our natural tendency toward apprehension while offering the remedy. This remedy is profound in its simplicity. For I am with you. The antidote to fear is not human courage, positive thinking, or the absence of threats. It is the presence of God himself. This echoes God's words to Joshua before entering the promised land. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. The promise of divine presence transforms the landscape of our fears, not by removing challenges, but by ensuring we never face them alone. The Hebrew preposition translated with umphith, imaf, denotes close personal accompaniment, not distant observation but intimate partnership. God does not merely watch from afar but enters our circumstances, walking alongside us through the darkest valleys. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. While fear often describes an immediate emotional response to danger, this may suggest a more settled state of desperation, confusion, and hopelessness. The Hebrew term, dishta, conveys the idea of looking around anxiously, seeking help but finding none. It is the feeling of being utterly lost with no path forward. Again, God provides not merely comfort but the reason behind it. For I am your God. This statement establishes identity and relationship. The creator of the universe claims personal connection with his people. The phrase recalls covenant language throughout Israel's history, where God repeatedly declared, I will be your God, and you shall be my people. Leviticus chapter 26 verse 12. This relational assertion carries tremendous significance. The exiles might have questioned whether their national calamity meant God had rejected them. Instead, he reaffirms the covenant relationship. For contemporary believers, this reminds us that our relationship with God is not dependent on circumstances, but on his faithful character and promises. I will strengthen you and help you. Moving beyond promises of presence, God commits to active intervention. I will strengthen you addresses human weakness directly. The Hebrew verb imatztiha conveys the idea of making firm or strong what was previously feeble or inadequate. Similarly, I will help you establishes God as actively supportive, not merely observing our struggles sympathetically, but engaging as our helper. This divine help is not reluctant assistance, but eager partnership. God does not simply offer tips for self-improvement, but promises his own power, working through human limitation. These twin promises recognize that facing fear requires more than just courage. It demands resources beyond ourselves. When challenges exceed our capacities, God's strengthening grace becomes the decisive factor, enabling endurance that would otherwise be impossible. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. The verse culminates with this striking image of divine support. I will uphold you uses a Hebrew term, tamarticha, that suggests holding something firmly, preventing it from falling or being shaken. The picture is not of casual assistance, but determined, unwavering support. The reference to God's righteous right hand adds layers of meaning. Throughout Scripture, the right hand symbolizes power and strength. The dominant hand represents maximum capability, authority and honor. Sitting at someone's right hand meant sharing their authority, victory, and salvation. God's right hand crushes enemies and delivers his people, righteousness and justice. Actions performed with justice and moral integrity. By invoking his righteous right hand, God promises not only powerful support, but morally perfect, just, and faithful assistance. Thus saith the Lord, the help offered cometh from one who always acts in accordance with his holy character and covenant promises. Theological themes in the verse. God's presence. Perhaps the most foundational theological theme in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 is the reality of God's presence with his people. Throughout Scripture, this presence distinguishes God's people from all others. When Moses negotiated with God, after Israel's sin with the golden calf, he insisted, "If your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us?" Exodus chapter 33 verses 15 to 16. Scripture repeatedly demonstrates that awareness of God's presence transforms human experience. Moses faced Pharaoh because he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 27. David confronted Goliath with confidence because the Lord of hosts was with Israel. 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 45. Paul found contentment in all circumstances through him who strengthens me. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13. The promise, I am with you, forms the foundation for courage in seemingly impossible situations. When God commissioned Jeremiah for difficult prophetic ministry, he prefaced challenging assignments with, "Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you." Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 8. In the New Testament, Jesus' final promise to his disciples echoes this same assurance. "I am with you always, to the end of the age." Matthew chapter 28 verse 20. This divine presence represents not merely emotional comfort, but actual power, protection, and partnership in the midst of life's challenges. God's strength versus human weakness. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 addresses the fundamental asymmetry between human limitation and divine capability. The promise of strengthening acknowledges our inherent weakness. We require divine empowerment precisely because our resources are insufficient. This theme resonates throughout Scripture, perhaps most explicitly in Paul's testimony. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. The Christian paradox emerges in this tension: strength through acknowledged weakness, sufficiency through recognized insufficiency. God's promise to strengthen does not demand we first demonstrate our own power, but invites honest recognition of our limitations as the starting point for experiencing his empowerment. God as helper and defender. The final promises of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10, help and upholding, establish God as active participant in human struggles. The Hebrew scriptures repeatedly celebrate God as Ezer, helper, not implying subordination but powerful assistance. The psalmist exclaims, "Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth." Psalm chapter 124 verse 8. God's help is neither passive nor theoretical. The image of his upholding right hand suggests active intervention, catching, supporting, and sustaining those who would otherwise fall. This reflects the broader biblical pattern where God delivers those trapped in impossible circumstances, Exodus chapter 14, provides resources when human supplies fail, 1 Kings chapter 17, protects those facing overwhelming opposition, Psalm chapter 91, restores what enemies have destroyed, Joel chapter 2 verse 25. For believers facing contemporary challenges, this promises God's practical involvement in real-world difficulties, not merely spiritual comfort disconnected from material reality. Application in everyday life, dealing with personal fears. While Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 emerged from national catastrophe, its promises apply equally to individual fears. Modern believers face myriad anxieties: fear of serious illness or death, financial insecurity or economic hardship, relational rejection or abandonment, professional failure or inadequacy, uncertain futures or major life transitions. These fears can paralyze, distort decision-making, and erode quality of life. Yet God's promise, "Fear not, for I am with you," offers the foundation for a different response. Practically, believers can identify specific fears through prayerful self-examination, bringing each before God honestly. Counteract fear with truth by meditating on promises like Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10, allowing Scripture to reshape perspective. Practice God's presence through regular prayer, worship, and communion with Him. Seek community support from fellow believers who provide encouragement and accountability. Take courageous action despite feelings of fear, trusting God's presence more than emotional signals. The transformation rarely happens instantly. Fear diminishes gradually as we experience God's faithfulness through repeated challenges. Each difficulty becomes an opportunity to discover His presence, strength, help, and upholding more deeply. Finding strength in trials, life inevitably brings seasons of trial, periods of suffering, loss, or adversity that drain emotional and spiritual resources. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 speaks directly to these moments with the promise, "I will strengthen you, I will help you." This strengthening appears in various forms: physical endurance during illness, disability, or demanding seasons; emotional resilience through grief, disappointment, or relational pain; mental clarity amid confusion, difficult decisions, or cognitive challenges; spiritual fortitude when facing doubt, temptation, or spiritual warfare. Biblical figures like Joseph, Ruth, Daniel, and Paul demonstrated this God-given strength through circumstances that would crush most people. Their stories remind us that divine strengthening doesn't make trials painless, but makes endurance possible. Practical application includes honest acknowledgement of our limitations and need for divine strength; regular spiritual practices that position us to receive God's strengthening; rest and self-care as physical components of spiritual resilience; community support, through which God often channels strength and help; testimony sharing to recognize and celebrate instances of God's strengthening. As Paul testified, believers discover that when they are weak, then they are strong, not through self-reliance, but through deeper dependence on God's promised support. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 10. Living boldly in faith. Perhaps the ultimate application of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 moves beyond mere survival of fearful circumstances to proactive, bold living. God's promise to uphold us with my righteous right hand provides foundation for courage that transcends crisis management. This emboldened living might express itself through vocational courage to pursue God's calling despite risks or opposition; relational investment that loves vulnerably despite potential rejection; truth-speaking that advocates justice and righteousness in hostile environment; evangelistic witness, sharing faith despite cultural resistance; sacrificial generosity, giving beyond comfort zones to meet others' needs. Throughout history, those who internalize promises like Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 accomplished extraordinary things. William Wilberforce persisted through decades of opposition to abolish slavery. Amy Carmichael served tirelessly, rescuing children from temple prostitution in India. Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood against Nazi tyranny at the cost of his life. Each demonstrated bold faith anchored in the assurance of God's upholding hand. For contemporary believers, such boldness develops through viewing challenges as opportunities to witness God's faithfulness, focusing on God's character rather than circumstantial uncertainties, remembering past faithfulness as evidence of future reliability, starting with small steps of courage that build capacity for larger ones, fixing eyes on eternal perspective that reframes temporal risks. As believers experience God's presence, strength, and help in small challenges, capacity develops for increasingly courageous living that impacts the world for Christ. In conclusion, Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 remains a timeless declaration that believers can face fear and discouragement with confidence, knowing God is present, powerful, and faithful. These divine promises, "I am with you, I am your God, I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you," form an unshakable foundation for courage in an uncertain world. From ancient exiles questioning God's faithfulness to contemporary believers facing personal crises, this verse bridges time and culture with enduring assurance. Its power lies not in positive thinking or wishful optimism, but in the unchanging character of God Himself. His covenant loyalty, His limitless strength, His intimate presence, and His righteous reliability. As we navigate life's inevitable fears and challenges, may we daily meditate on these divine promises, surrendering our anxieties to the one who has promised never to leave us. May we recognize our weakness as the stage upon which God's strength shines most brightly. And may we walk forward in bold faith, confident that we are forever upheld by His righteous right hand. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalm chapter 56 verse 3.